Welcome in to Daily Faceoff Live, your go-to source for everything hockey. Live every weekday at noon Eastern.
Welcome in to Daily Faceoff Live, Wednesday, October 25th. And if last night we were drunk on hockey, this morning it's the hockey hangover. And we'll dissect everything we got on Frozen Frenzy Day on Daily Faceoff Live. The show is brought to you by Betano, betano.ca 19+. Please play responsibly. I'm Tyler Yaremchuk, and he is our NHL insider, Frank Seravalli. Frank, did you enjoy the run of hockey last night?
I did. Not so much the NLCS, but please tell me that somewhere on the planet Earth, someone hit a 16-game parlay last night.
Oh, there has to be someone, right? Has to be. I was not close to hitting mine. I think I missed
five. You said $5 paid $85,000.
Yeah.
I saw a couple people dropping their bet slips, $100 parlay, 16 teams. Oh, anyway, someone somewhere. I haven't seen any word yet, but somewhere, please tell me.
Yeah, someone had to have done it. All right, let's dig into what we saw last night. There was a lot going on around the NHL, so we'll just start with a recap of Frozen Frenzy, Frank. And on the ice, I think it kind of lived up to the hype. You got hat tricks from Hartman and Toffoli. We had 5 of the games combined for 9+ goals. There were third period comebacks, overtime thrillers. 3 teams kept their perfect seasons alive. The entertainment value was there for this 16-game slate. It wasn't like a bunch of 2-1 games.
Yeah, there was also some scary injuries, as you mentioned, the hat trick, some nice feats for players. But, you know, at any time you get all 32 teams in action on one night, there's bound to be a few hiccups, things that go wrong. A power outage in Columbus forced the NHL's schedule, which was sort of perfectly synced to have staggered start times. All of a sudden that goes from 6:30 to 8:30. It's like, come on, this is why we can't have nice things. And then you see the skate blade to Jacob Lauko's eye. Thankfully, he's going to be okay. John Ludwig in Pittsburgh, he's making his NHL debut. He's knocked out cold trying to make a hit at center ice. Man, it's like one of those things, so many different things happening. If you're the NHL, you're also sitting back and also kind of bracing for impact, knowing that things could go wrong. But for the most part, pretty incredible night of hockey.
There was some complaints about the way things work. Red Wings head coach Derek Lalonde said, "It's absolutely awful. I get it on the big picture, but I don't know why our fans, who are as loyal as can be, have to come to the rink for an 8:23 start. I mean, my family's not coming. They're staying home because of it." Start times really seem to be the only complaint from this whole thing. And I think the solution, we hinted at it earlier in the week, if you do this on a Saturday when you can start a couple hours earlier, it's golden. I think this kind of thing can work. And I think the red zone feel on ESPN also worked.
Yeah, I think the couple complaints are, 1, that it wasn't available in Canada.
Yeah.
2, the idea that it was on a Tuesday in October. And 3, when you do that, it comes with some wonky start times. I mean, puck drop for the Flyers game in Vegas. So if you're local in Philly, it was 11:08 Eastern. I mean, that is pretty late. That was the last game on the slate. I made it through 2 periods of that game, and it was like, come on, like hockey started at 6:00 tonight. That was a long day. It was probably a long day for the Department of Player Safety in the NHL's hockey ops situation room as well.
Yeah, there were some questionable hits throughout that one. I saw on the Red Zone channel, they even had a chance to chat with George Peros about the way that works. So we'll see if we get anything today.
I was going to say kudos to Commissioner Gary Bettman as well. He was up late. He did a hit from his house in the 11 o'clock hour as well. So he was also part of the fun. So, the commissioner was up watching hockey.
Yeah, it was honestly a really, really fun night. And I hope it's something that maybe the league even does a little bit more often next year. Like, branded is Super Saturday, and pick a Saturday a month where you're like, yeah, we're doing this. Everyone's playing.
It's hard though. Building availabilities in you need at least 16 arenas, and then the matrix to all line up. Like, I give them credit for trying something different. Tough that it's in October and on a Tuesday.
Yeah, but they tried something new. And I mean, we ripped the NHL a good amount for their lack of creativity and marketing and things like that. So I should probably bite my tongue on some of my complaints when they actually do, like you said, logistically pull off something like this. It's quite impressive. We're going to talk a little bit more about what we saw on the ice last night later on in the show. Luke Gazdic's going to stop by for an edition of the Players Room. Frank, But off the ice yesterday, Nikita Zadorov made some waves out in Calgary. We'll give our comments on it, but first I want to play the clip for the listeners.
There's some things need to get working out, but I think main thing for us, we're just not working as the unit yet. We have too many individuals playing by themselves, so I think we're gonna figure out if we want to play as the team or we want to play as the home guy, whatever.
Too many individuals playing for themselves is what Nikita Zadorov had to say yesterday. He also had a really interesting line towards the end of his availability where he said last season was different. It was Daryl. Now there's no Daryl, so there's no excuses. You guys don't like hard coaches. You don't like soft coaches. You don't like good coaches. It's a new day league. I mean, those are some scathing comments from Zadorov, and I think it speaks to maybe some tension in that Flames locker room.
Yeah, I mean, this was certainly eye-opening for me. Look, you were with me last year at All-Star Weekend when we had Nazem Kadri on the pod, and he said, the Calgary Flames will make the playoffs if we start playing as a team. And it was a 3-second soundbite, but to me, it said so much more than that. And to hear this now in the first couple weeks of the season, it was kind of fascinating to hear media ask Blake Coleman about it after Calgary's game and lost to the New York Rangers last night. And he was like, well, sometimes frustration gets the best of us. And it's like, no, that's not frustration. It's great that you tried to sweep that under the rug, but this is a player calling out his teammates. We don't know which ones in specific, but it's clear to me that something at the very least is off kilter in the Calgary Flames room, whether it's lack of chemistry, cohesion. I don't know if it's a personal thing. Some guys don't like each other. They just haven't gotten in sync playing with each other, whatever it might be. It's certainly a red flag in terms of what happens next for the Calgary Flames, because this is a team that entered the year with expectations to bounce back. That's the way we've seen this team as a good team that really underachieved last year. And so far to start, we've seen a team that has been lifeless at times, a team that certainly hasn't brought its work ethic and effort to the rink on a consistent basis. And it leaves a lot of question marks as to where does this team go next, as it's still trying to sign all of these players that are pending unrestricted free agents, including Elias Lindholm. And we heard some conversation earlier in the week that Noah Hannafin had made progress and maybe getting closer. I think that kind of hit a little bit of a snag. But look, we're in a spot now where the Flames don't want to become the New York Islanders of the West, which is a team that is totally locked into a group for term and dollars that can't quite get over the hump. And sounds to me like a team that needs to diagnose some of the issues that it has.
Yeah, and you kind of already answered my next question now. And it's, listen, the vibes were so high when we went down there to record interviews for Frankly Speaking in training camp. All everyone talked about is how it was a breath of fresh air that got jolted in to this locker room. Everyone was ready to have a better season. And it's not even like they were that far off. And it's not even like this is that terrible of a start either. You have 5 points in your first 7 games. I know it's a 3-game losing streak. Frustrations are high. But the fact it gets public this quick and the frustrations are clearly growing as fast as they are, if I'm Craig Conroy, I think I got to sit there and go, well, hold up here. Is this maybe not the right group to commit to long term?
That's what I think is kind of the beauty of the spot that they're in, is don't overcommit at this moment. Take your time. Craig Conroy used the time that he had available to him this summer to kind of keep the band together, keep things status quo, keep everyone on the same page. Now you got to do the same and also diagnose some of those issues, because it's obviously a real thing.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they need to go through a long and painful rebuild, but maybe just don't commit to these extensions right at this very moment. Wait and see how things play out for a couple months before you commit. That's an interesting segue, Frank, into our next segment, because the Calgary Flames, I mean, they're not alone in their own province for feeling disappointment in the way their season started. Never mind on the league as a whole. So we're going to play a little edition of Rank 'em. Frank, we've identified the 4 teams in the league that we think should be the most disappointed in their starts. And it's the Oilers, the Flames, the Penguins, and the Senators. And I'll let you go first with this. Rank those 4 in terms of your level of concern.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider the spot that these teams are in, based on Zadorov's comments, based on what we heard from Nazem Kadri before, And based on the situation that they're in, trying to bounce back and what we've seen from this team to start, I've got the Flames right at the top of that list, because that to me is a sign of a team. When you start to hear that publicly, that usually happens in March, April, the end of the season, as you get close to locker cleanout day. Very rarely does that come out in late October, 3 weeks into the season. I've got the Sens next, and you can never really rely too much on the words that players use, but when Claude Giroux said this week, it's not time to hit the panic button, I'm like, ooh, panic button. That's interesting. So the Sens to me are a team to continue to monitor. I thought they looked good the first few games. Since then, have struggled a little bit. I have concern about the Pittsburgh Penguins. I've talked and was open, heading into the season about their ability to try and assimilate Erik Karlsson. Doesn't have a single point on the power play yet. 4 points in 6 games to start. And I think for a team that had so many issues defending in its own end, that to me is what stands out for the Pens. And I'm really kind of less concerned about the Oilers. They hit, a couple games to start that, in years past, they probably would have won. I'm thinking of the home games that they've had, the second game against the Canucks, the game against the Jets. They had really good stretches in those games. Their record would probably look a little bit different if they were, 3-3 or something like that, you wouldn't be raising the alarms just yet on the Oilers.
Yeah, and that's the reason why, and we'll flash up mine here in a second. I have the Oilers fourth too. I've been following this team long enough to be able to say every season they have a month where they look awful. This might just be the month where they look awful, and it's happening at the start of the season, whatever. The Calgary Flames, I actually had it 3 on my list just because I still believe in this roster enough. I think, if Zadorov doesn't make those comments yesterday, we're probably not even talking about them all that much today. The Sens,
Pens, huh?
Pardon?
The Pens are the one to me that jumps out when I look at this.
Yeah, I just sit there and I go, okay, remember last year they missed the playoffs and a lot of things went right for them. They had their vets stay healthy for that whole season, Frank. That's never a guarantee with any team, never mind a team that's as old as the Pittsburgh Penguins are. I haven't been very impressed with the Erik Karlsson thing early on. I'm not sure if that experiment is working through 6 games. And if that experiment's not going to work, then they're running back the same team that missed the playoffs last year. I don't know if they addressed their core issues this summer, and through 6 games, I'm not inspired to believe that they've done that.
Yeah, I think that's a totally fair assessment. And you could argue in some ways that they might have even gotten worse because, they changed out the bottom 6. But they also eroded a little bit of their depth, particularly on the blue line. I think Jan Ruda had a really disappointing year last year, but he's still a good defenseman that you've now shipped off to San Jose. And you took back a guy in Karlsson who, yes, 100-point scorer, and he may score 75 this year. But if he doesn't fit in with what you're trying to do, I'm not really sure how much it's going to help you for a team that already missed the playoffs.
Brad Beatty is in on the YouTube chat. He says, I vote Edmonton. Jeremiah, our resident Capitals fan, he uses his Capitals as a measuring stick, Frank. He says, the Flames are in trouble. They lost to the Capitals. What does that tell you? Well, we'll talk a little positively about your Capitals here, Jeremiah. And Alex Ovechkin, listen, it was a losing effort yesterday for the Capitals, so I'm sure they don't want to hear us talk too much about that game last night. But what a performance by Alexander Ovechkin last night. I mean, he goes and scores a goal on what was his 13th shot of the game. And it feels like he maybe watched our program or one of the other programs and said, hold up, you think I'm washed? You think I'm, heading to the 18th green on my career here? No. I still got it. That was impressive last night.
Yeah, I mean, he still is probably coming down 17 fairway right now. And so that is fair to say. And he hasn't looked like himself to this point, starting the season with back-to-back games held without a shot. He makes up for that with a massive night against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And by the way, just a totally unlucky night for the Caps. They pretty much mauled the Toronto Maple Leafs in every facet of the game that you could imagine. I think the Leafs had something like 4 shots and were still leading in that game. It was crazy to think of how crazy the Leafs were outplayed and still the Caps find a way to lose. Certainly disappointing, but what's bananas about that OV stat, if you throw it back up on the board, Gavin, is That was his 300th power play goal as a Washington Capital. It also happened to line up that it was the 3,000th power play goal for the Washington Capitals, which means that Ovi accounts for 10% of the entire Washington Capitals franchise power play goals. So you look here at the record and what that means. Teams that have not been around nearly as long. Teemu Selanne has 12% of Anaheim. Steven Stamkos, almost 12% of Tampa Bay. Both of those teams, their franchises they had a 20-year jump on the Washington Capitals. They weren't founded until the 90s. So the Caps in the mid 70s, Ovechkin has way more runway and has nearly caught these guys in terms of overall power play contribution. So pretty crazy stat to think about.
I got a couple of other crazy OV stats for you as we wrap up the segment. That was the 53rd time in his career he's finished a game with 10 or more shots on goal. It's just the third time he's hit the 14 shot mark. He's done 15 twice, once in 06 and once back in 2015. Frank, 53 times he's been 10 plus shots. In his career, he's only been held shotless 19 times. That is insane.
Look, some guys don't get 530 shots in their entire career. He has 300 power play goals. Most guys would be thrilled with 300 goals of any kind in their entire career. It's insane what he's accomplished.
Yeah, so stick taps to Ovi on having a nice bounce back night. Maybe we shouldn't have been doing the whole, is he even a 40 goal scorer? Maybe Ovi's, I don't know, maybe he's not going to be fine.
He'll get to the mid 30s. Relax.
Yeah, he'll get to the mid 30s. All right, let's move along and get to today's big segment. It's the Players Room with Luke Gazdic. Players Room is delivered by DoorDash. You can make gift shopping fun again with DoorDash. Shop for everyone on your list with items like gift cards, cosmetics, sleep masks, candles, and more. It's all available to order. Yes, even at the last minute. Finding that perfect gift has never been easier with DoorDash. Welcoming in Luke Gazdic to the show as we do every Wednesday. Luke, just first off, what did you think of the 16-game slate last night in the hockey overload?
Oh, great night at the studio, guys. Honestly, we had the green screen going. We were coming up in intermissions for all the Canadian teams, but it was wild just to see everybody going at once. A couple of good games on the schedule. It was awesome, guys, honestly.
We talked about everything that went on the ice last night, and one thing that stood out is all three teams who were off to perfect starts, they remain perfect, and two of them are in the Western Conference with the Vegas Golden Knights and the Colorado Avalanche. Looking at these two, if you could only declare one the true juggernaut of the West, who would it be?
I got to go with Vegas, honestly. The way they've shown absolutely no regression whatsoever, not only getting the goaltending, but you hear that phrase that they come at you in waves all the time. And that's what I see from Vegas, starting their fourth line against first lines all the time. Their transition game off the rush, like if you're making mistakes in the neutral zone, they are going right back down on you. It's fascinating to watch. Jack Eichel's becoming one of my favorite players to watch in hockey. His puck possession skills and the way he can use everybody around him and do it himself. Colorado does it a little differently with their speed and you know, they're kind of their electric top six. But for me, it's Vegas, guys.
Yeah, it's funny, Luke. I look at Colorado and I think so much of what I see from them with Nathan McKinnon, he's a force of nature. Like they just kind of bull you over in terms of getting where they want to get to. And so just curious in general, give us your, if you've got Vegas at the top, give us your Western Conference power rankings.
All right. I'll give you a little top five. I like Vegas and Vegas one, like I said, Colorado number two with what they've shown and Nate McKinnon leading the way. The Dallas Stars for me are number three. They look good. That's a nice veteran club. I've been a big Jamie Benn fan for a while. I was actually a Dallas draft pick back in 2007 and a good young goaltender in Jake Ottinger. The LA Kings probably fall behind them at number four. Great center depth, another veteran club. I played for Todd McClellan. You know how he coaches, loves that kind of defensive, hard to play against style. And guys, I wanted to throw in a Canadian team, but I'm going to give it to the Minnesota Wild. I like the dynamic, the dynamic lineup that they have, putting up 7 against the Oil last night. I know that, the Oilers aren't playing as well as they possibly could, but they got a good mix of big guys. And that line with Zuccarello and Kaprizov is fast. And same thing with them. Like in the offensive zone, they'll cycle, they'll work you puck possession, and in transition, they make you pay for your mistakes. And you can even see their aggressiveness on the PK last night. They go for it, getting chances with a man down. So I'll let the Wild slide in there at number 5.
Gavin, if we could maybe just flash up those Western Conference standings a little bit, Luke, I want to maybe get your take on someone outside of your top 5. I mean, you see Vancouver off to a good start. They're 4-2 now. Rick Tocchet called them out a couple of weeks ago. They responded really, really well. Teams like Winnipeg and Arizona off to really good starts. Is there anyone who in the first 6-7 games of the season has maybe really changed your opinion of them early on?
I think you said it right there. I think it's Vancouver. And the reason I didn't put them in the top 5 is I think they had 2 tough losses last week, one to Philly and the other to Tampa. But Rick Tocchet's kind of brought in this cultures where everyone's buying in and their top guys are doing it every night. JT Miller, Elias Pettersson. It's just a drop off for me. They had some depth scoring last night. Mikheyev, Hoglander, DiGiuseppe got his first last night, but they're going to need more of that. They need to be able to roll them over like the Vegases and like the Avs. The Jets are right on the outside too for me too, but with a goalie like Connor Hellebuck, they can get anything done. Scheifele's playing some good hockey, but they're sitting just outside. Vancouver's an interesting one for me. I want to see how they can keep this going. It's kind of like they're showing me a little, but they got to continue bringing this and a little more depth from their bottom 6.
Luke, I think we all enjoyed having 32 teams in action on Tuesday night. Is there anything you'd change about the Frozen Frenzy?
Oh, good question. No, honestly, it was cool, man. Maybe have it on a weekend instead of a Tuesday night. I'd love that on a Saturday, like a football day. But other than that, I think they did a phenomenal job from start to finish, especially with the staggered times and allowing everyone just to get a peek into what was going on. It's a great idea, and I hope we can continue to see a couple more of those going forward, whether it's this year. I think we only have one more left this year in terms of every team playing on one night. But hopefully they can look into that going forward, and especially us on the Canadian side, if we can kind of work on broadcasting that kind of like Bucci did last night. Like, I would love to be sitting there like Scotty Hansen going from game to game and power play to power play. That'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, it was cool. And the staggered times, like you said, really made it neat because you'd watch a first period and then boom, just quickly flip over to something else. Luke Gazdic in the players' room, delivered by our friends at DoorDash. For a limited time, our Canadian listeners can get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and use that promo code at the top of your screen, Nation25. Thanks, Luke.
Thanks, guys.
Our producer Gavin just put in all caps in our chat. The Octobox. Yeah, I'd love to see that. John Bucci Gross. We're going to all 6 teams on the power play right now, or all 8 teams. It'd be cool.
Am I the only one that didn't really understand the idea of the staggered start time? Like, I mean, no one complains about. First off, I think the NHL is so incredibly parochial. Like, you don't really care about teams outside of your own market unless you're like a hardcore fan. That's one. And two, like, the fact that the bulk of NFL games on Sundays all start at the exact same time at 1:00. Like, I don't hear anyone belly aching saying like, oh, why can't these be staggered? And most of them are all at halftime at the same exact time too. It's like the perfect time to go to your fridge.
Yeah, I don't know. I liked it in the NHL just because the intermissions, I don't know, there's 2 intermissions in a game. So you'd have 2 awkward breaks throughout it. So I just kind of like that. You could, again, like I was watching Leafs Caps, boom, that went to intermission. Flip over, I'm right in the thick of the action with Sens Sabres. That goes to intermission. I'm back the other way. Like, I don't know. I liked it. I do understand your point, though, because you're right. NFL football, they start every game on Sunday at the exact same time. So,
and I would say we did mention it, but I thought it was really cool how the NHL leaned into it and had a bunch of different people available. George Parros, Gary Bettman, whoever it was, to get a view into how the league makes a night like that work, I think was really important.
Yeah, it was really neat. We also saw a couple of highlight reel goals last night. So we're going to run them here, starting with Paul Cotter out in Vegas. I mean, you want to talk about this Vegas depth. How many teams have a depth player who can go and do something like this? Walks in, whoop, through the legs, inside out, far side, top corner. Nasty stuff. And then in Montreal, we had Michael Matheson.
This one was ridiculous.
Ripping end to end, like fakes the drop back. Okay, you bid on that. I'll do it again. Okay, you bid on that. And then a little speed burst, hold down the trigger for a speed burst.
Patience.
it was nasty. Which one was more impressive to you?
The Matheson one, it kind of reminded me, like I got a little feel of like the Marek Malik shootout goal from the Rangers way back in the day. You're not expecting that, and you're definitely not expecting an end-to-end rush from Mike Matheson. So for me, that was it.
Yeah, my jaw was on the floor watching the Michael Matheson one, because it's also a reminder that even the guys that you don't perceive as like elite skilled players in the NHL, they're all really damn good.
I think about this all the time when it comes to pitchers in baseball. They don't hit anymore, but when they did, and you'd see one hit a home run, you're like, on that guy's high school and college team, he was probably the guy at the plate that was mashing.
Yeah.
And now he doesn't get the opportunity anymore. These guys, so Taylor Hall said it to me when I was talking to him about Connor Bedard and his frustrations to start the year. He's like, these other guys, they made it to the NHL too.
Yeah. Every player in the NHL at some point, even if they're a fourth liner who's just there to fight, at some point they were the best player on their team in their
They were
life.
the best player in their league, most likely,
Yeah.
and putting up like literally 100+ points, even as defensemen, even as fourth liners on whatever team they played on.
All right, let's move along to our Betano daily bets. Frank, I gave 3 plays yesterday outside of the 16-leg parlay, and I actually went 2 for 3 with them. I just missed on the player prop. The Canucks came through, Leafs and the Devils came through as well in a parlay. So a good start, or a good start to the week, I guess. It was a Tuesday. The 16-leg parlay as well. I went 10 or 11 for 16, Frank, with the one I recommended yesterday. So did our producer, Gavin. Someone was in the chat too over on Facebook. Jimmy said he was 12-4. That is really close. And if those 4 losses came late in the slate, then you were definitely
Yeah, if
sweating
you had
a
like
little bit.
the Golden Knights, for instance, or whatever, yeah, well, that one would have worked. But if you had the Flyers, for instance, and they were up 2-1 in the third, that one would have been tough.
Tonight, quiet night in the NHL with just 1 game. I got 1 play. I'm going right back to the New Jersey Devils, minus a goal and a half, sitting at just a hair below even money. Listen, the Capitals, they played well last night, still didn't win. Lost 4-1, didn't even cover the puck line. I think the Devils are looking good. They had a little bit of a scare early on against the Canadiens, but they're at home. So I like the idea that they're the home team in the back-to-back. Washington's the one that's had to do at least a little bit of travel. So I like taking the Devils to win by 2 or more tonight.
And we got to give a little love to Jack Hughes, tied for the league lead in scoring with 14 points to start the year. He's been unreal. And you know what's really cool about the night that Jack Hughes had against the Montreal Canadiens? 4 assists. And you're thinking, how many of those were cheesy apples?
Nope.
The answer, none of them. 4 primary assists for Jack Hughes. The guy's a beast.
Tyler Toffoli, loving life in New Jersey. He's like, damn, I get to play with this guy for like the other 75 games of the year.
What a pickup. What a pickup.
All right, let's wrap up the show, Frank, with a little bit of garbage time. And it is brought to you by Wendy's. Wendy's is letting you win real food with your fantasy team this year and daily face-off. For those of you who smoke the competition, Wendy's is rewarding you with weekly prizes that will have you savoring the true taste of victory. We're launching our Survivor game right away, so keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com. Frank, what do you got for garbage time?
Thanks to Arizona Coyotes defenseman Travis Dermott, who's on a 2-way contract and fighting to stay in the NHL, and longtime NHL partner Scotiabank, which made a decision to hand out 5,000 free rolls of Pride tape. The NHL reversed its decision on Tuesday, just shortly after our show ended, and allowed players to go back to using Pride tape if they so desired, or to support any special initiative cause that they might see fit with something like tape. It was crazy that the NHL went to this length to begin with to ban it. I understand their thought process. They're trying to protect freedom of speech and ability to protect yourself if you don't want to participate. But to clap back as far as they didn't make any sense to me. And it was only a matter of time, as soon as Travis Dermott did that they were essentially put in a spot where they had to make a decision. Was the NHL going to punish Dermott for this decision to use Pride tape? And I'm told that there were multiple teams ready to go that were ready to use Pride tape almost in its entirety. Then what? What would the NHL do? So this forced a decision, and you see the NHL roll back its ban. Should have never happened, but they've gotten to the right place now.
Yeah, and a big shout out to Travis Dermott, who's been a great ally throughout the years. I also did. It's beside the point, but I got a chuckle out of just sort of the indirect, like backhanded compliments. People are like, great on Travis Dermott, a fringe NHLer, a guy who could be taken off the roster at any point and they wouldn't miss him. And I'm like, oh man, I feel for him. He's probably sitting there on Twitter.
He has something to lose is the point.
Know,
He's not an established guy with an 8-year contract that's sitting on a pile of money. What if the league had said to someone, hey, get rid of this guy, get this guy out of here? And if you say, hold on, no one would ever do that. Just remember what happened with John Scott being MVP of the All-Star weekend. It does happen from time to time. Players do end up being blackballed. And so let's keep that in mind and say it's not really that far-fetched of an idea.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, that is a wrap. Bera in the YouTube chat pointed out, Frank, what great attention to detail. He pointed out your Ted Lasso believe sign in the first show you had it.
There you go. Yeah, I was just trying to fix my set over here. And so you got to believe.
There you go. And you better believe we'll be back tomorrow at noon Eastern time with another edition of the show. And then Friday, live in the same room in Edmonton as Frank comes up for the Heritage Classic. Going to be a good week or a good couple of shows to wrap up the week. We hope to see you there on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. Big shout out to Betano. The game starts now at betano.ca. We'll talk with everyone again tomorrow.
Thanks for tuning in to Daily Faceoff Live. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.